Welcome to my channel, a list that bring your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The crystal chandelier above table 12 needed cleaning. I could see the dust gathering on its lowest tier, catching the amber light like tiny moths frozen mid-flight. My manager would have my head if she noticed, but I'd been on my feet for 9 hours straight. And the dining room of Celestine, Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurant, showed no signs of emptying. My lower back throbbed with each step as I balanced the tray of dirty dishes. The sharp scent of leftover béarnaise sauce mixing with expensive perfume and cigar smoke that clung to the velvet drapes. The weight pulled at my shoulders, and I had to pause near the kitchen doors, pressing my spine against the cool wall for just a moment of relief. Through the small circular window, I could see Chef Maurice screaming at a sous chef in rapid French, his face crimson under the harsh fluorescent lights. I took a breath, deep, steadying, and pushed through. "Table 7 needs water," Margot hissed as she breezed past me, her sleek black uniform somehow still pristine, while mine had a small stain near the hip from when I dropped a fork during the dinner rush. And table 12 just arrived. VIP reservation. Don't mess it up. Table 12. The corner booth with the best view of the city skyline, reserved weeks in advance, and only for people whose names appeared in Forbes or Page 6. I glanced over as I set down my tray, and my hands went cold. The air seemed to thin in my lungs. Dante. He sat with his back to the wall, always with his back to the wall, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. The fabric caught the light like oil on water, and even from across the room, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair was swept back with that effortless precision that made him look like he'd stepped out of a Renaissance painting. 2 men flanked the booth, standing rather than sitting, their eyes constantly scanning the room with the predatory alertness of wolves guarding their pack leader. My chest constricted. The tray in my hands suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Across from him sat a woman who looked like she'd been assembled by a team of experts. Platinum blonde hair that cascaded in perfect waves, a dress the color of champagne that probably had a designer name I couldn't pronounce, and diamonds at her throat that caught the light with every breath she took. She laughed at something he said, touching his hand across the table, her red nails bright against his olive skin. I hadn't seen Dante Valenti in 3 years. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, if I was being precise, which I tried very hard not to be. The kitchen door swung open behind me, and the sudden noise made me jump. My manager, Patricia, appeared at my elbow, her expression tight with the particular kind of stress that came from managing New York's elite during their anniversary dinners and business deals. "Elena," she said, her voice low and sharp, "table 12. Now, they're waiting." "I can't." My voice came out strangled. "Margot can take it. I'll cover her section." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Margot is handling table 18. Senator Morrison and his wife. You're on 12. She thrust 2 leather-bound menus into my hands, the weight of them solid and damning. "Move." I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to drop the menus, tear off my apron, and disappear into the Manhattan night. But I had $847 in my bank account, 2 babies at home with a sitter who charged by the hour, and an eviction notice that gave me until the end of the month to come up with $3,000 in back rent. So I moved. Each step across that dining room felt like walking through water. The noise around me, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the soft piano music from the corner, faded into a distant hum. My heels clicked against the marble floor, too loud, too sharp, announcing my approach like a drumbeat. Dante's security noticed me first. The one on the left, tall, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, straightened slightly, his hand moving almost imperceptibly toward his jacket. But then Dante looked up. Our eyes met. I watched his expression change in slow motion. First, confusion. A slight narrowing of his dark eyes as if he couldn't quite place me in this context, this uniform, this life. Then recognition, hitting him like a physical blow. His entire body went rigid, his hand freezing halfway to his wine glass. The woman across from him continued talking, oblivious, her voice high and bright as she described something about a yacht in the Mediterranean. "Good evening," I forced out. my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Welcome to Celestine. May I start you with Elena? My name. He said my name like it was pulled from him against his will, rough and low, with that slight Italian accent that became more pronounced when he was emotional. The woman stopped mid-sentence, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising as she looked between us. I'm sorry. Do you two know each other? She asked, her tone light, but with an edge of steel underneath. I gripped the menus so hard my knuckles went white. I'll give you a moment to decide on drinks, I said, placing the menus on the table with hands that only trembled slightly. Professional. Detached. Just a waitress doing her job. But Dante stood up. He actually stood up, and the movement was so sudden, so unexpected, that his date gasped. The two security guards tensed, their hands now fully inside their jackets, and I could feel every eye in the nearby tables turning toward us. Dante Valenti didn't do unexpected. He was control personified, every action calculated, every word measured. Dante, what? The woman started. Sit down, I whispered, panic flooding through me. Please, I'm working. He stared at me like I was a ghost, his dark eyes roaming over my face with an intensity that made my skin burn. He was looking for something, cataloging every change, the shadows under my eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, the way my uniform hung a bit looser on my frame than it should, the exhaustion I carried like a second skin. He didn't finish the sentence, but I watched his gaze drop lower, just for a second, to my stomach, to where, 3 years ago, I'd been just beginning to show before I disappeared from his life without a word. My hand moved instinctively to my midsection, a protective gesture I immediately regretted. Dante, darling, sit down. You're making a scene. The woman's voice had lost all its warmth, gone crisp with embarrassment and rising suspicion. He sank back into his seat slowly, but his eyes never left mine. The air between us crackled with unspoken words, with 3 years of silence and secrets that weighed more than all the dishes I'd carried tonight. Your server will be right back, I managed, turning on my heel. I made it 3 steps before his voice stopped me. Elena, don't. It wasn't loud. Dante never needed to be loud, but something in his tone, a command wrapped in desperation, made every muscle in my body lock up. I stood there, frozen in the middle of Celestine's dining room, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I need to work, I said without turning around. Please. The silence stretched. I could feel him warring with himself, could practically see the calculations running behind those intelligent, dangerous eyes. Dante Valenti was a man who controlled everything in his world. The docks, half the politicians in the city, and God knows what else I'd never wanted to know about. But here, in this public space, with his date watching and his carefully constructed image at stake, even he had limits. We'll talk, he said finally. Not a question. A statement. After your shift. I didn't answer. I just walked away, my legs somehow still functioning despite feeling like they'd been filled with ice water. Past table 7, where an elderly couple was celebrating their 50th anniversary. Past the bar, where Margot was flirting with a stockbroker in a Rolex. Past Patricia, whose sharp eyes tracked my movement with the precision of a hawk. I pushed through the kitchen doors and straight into the staff bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection in the spotted mirror. My dark hair was escaping from its bun. My lipstick had worn off hours ago, and my eyes were too wide, too bright with unshed tears. A knock on the door made me jump. Elena, you have 60 seconds. Then I need you back on the floor. Patricia's voice brooked no argument. Yes, ma'am, I called back, splashing cold water on my wrists, trying to slow my racing pulse. I couldn't fall apart. Not here. Not now. I had 4 more hours of my shift, and I needed every dollar of tonight's tips. The twins needed diapers, the electricity bill was overdue, and my phone had been blowing up all day with texts from the sitter asking when I could pay her for last week. The twins. God, the twins. I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting back the sob that wanted to escape. Lucas and Sophia, 2 years old, with their father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. They were home right now, probably asleep in the tiny second bedroom of my apartment, surrounded by hand-me-down toys and dreams that didn't include growing up with a mother who could barely keep them fed. Another knock. Elena. I dried my hands, straightened my uniform, and opened the door. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of forced smiles and trembling hands. I avoided table 12 like my life depended on it, passing the responsibility to Margot with a muttered excuse about feeling ill. She gave me a strange look, but didn't argue. She'd seen the way Dante had looked at me, and gossip traveled fast in our small staff, but I could feel him watching me. Every time I emerged from the kitchen, every time I passed within his line of sight, I felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. The woman with him, Isabel something I'd heard Patricia mention, seemed to grow increasingly agitated as the evening wore on, her voice rising in pitch even as Dante's responses grew more monosyllabic. At 11:47 p.m., they finally left. I was refilling water glasses at table 9 when I saw them stand. Dante helped Isabel into a white fur coat that probably cost more than my car, back when I'd had a car, and one of his security guards murmured something into his ear. Dante nodded, then turned and looked directly at me across the dining room. He mouthed 2 words, "We talk." Then he was gone, swept out into the New York night by his protective detail, leaving behind a $500 tip on a $400 bill and the lingering scent of his cologne. Something expensive and woody that made my chest ache with memories I'd tried to bury. I finished my shift at 12:30 a.m., my feet screaming and my back on fire. The tips had been good tonight, $340, enough to buy me a few more days before the wolves came knocking. I changed out of my uniform in the staff locker room, pulling on jeans and an old sweater, scrubbing the makeup off my face until only exhaustion remained. The night air hit me like a slap as I exited through the service entrance into the alley behind the restaurant. February in Manhattan was brutal, and my thin jacket did little to cut the wind that whistled between the buildings. I pulled it tighter and started walking toward the subway, my sneakers splashing through puddles of melted snow mixed with God knows what else. I made it halfway down the alley before a black Mercedes SUV pulled up beside me, its tinted windows reflecting the grimy brick walls. The passenger window rolled down smoothly, and my stomach dropped. Dante sat in the back seat, his expression unreadable in the dim light from the vehicle's interior. "Get in, Elena. I'm taking the subway." "At 1 in the morning? In this neighborhood?" His voice was flat, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Get in. I've been doing it for 3 years. I'll be fine." The back door opened, and suddenly he was standing there in the alley with me. And Christ, I'd forgotten how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill all available space until there was no room left for air. His security detail materialized from the front seats, 3 men, all watching the alley entrances with professional paranoia. "Where are they?" Dante asked, his voice low and dangerous. My heart stuttered. "Where are who?" His jaw clenched. Don't play games with me. Not now. Not about this." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne mixing with the city stench of garbage and exhaust. "I saw the way you touched your stomach in there. I saw your face. And I've spent the last 3 years wondering if you were dead in a ditch somewhere because you vanished like smoke. And now you're here, looking like," he gestured at me, something breaking in his controlled expression, "like you haven't slept in months. So I'll ask you again. Where are they?" The plural. He'd said they. My blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Elena." My name came out like a warning. I've built an empire on reading people, on knowing when someone is lying to me. And right now, you're lying so badly it's insulting. A car passed the end of the alley, its headlights briefly illuminating us in harsh white light before plunging us back into shadow. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly colder than the February night could account for. "It doesn't matter," I said finally. "Whatever you think you know, it doesn't matter. That life, your life, it's not mine anymore. I left. I'm not coming back. You were pregnant." The words hung in the air between us like an accusation, not a question. A statement. "Go back to your girlfriend," I said, my voice shaking. "Your anniversary dinner, your perfect life. Forget you saw me." Forget? He laughed, a sound without humor. Forget? Elena, I've had people looking for you for 3 years. 3 years. Do you have any idea what that was like? Thinking you were dead? Thinking someone had taken you? Killed you? His hand shot out and gripped my arm. Not hard, but firm enough that I couldn't easily pull away. And now I find you here, serving tables, looking like a ghost. And you want me to forget? I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just slightly. Let me go. Tell me first. There's nothing to tell. Liar. We stood there in a deadlock, his dark eyes boring into mine, searching for the truth I'd hidden for so long. And God help me, I wanted to tell him. Wanted to scream that yes, I'd been pregnant, that I'd left because his world was poison, and I wouldn't raise children in it, that Lucas had his eyes and Sophia had his stubborn streak, and every single day I saw his face in theirs, and it broke my heart all over again. But I also remembered the blood, the violence. The night I'd seen him kill a man in his own office, cold and efficient and terrible. The way he'd wiped the blood off his hands with a white handkerchief and kissed my forehead like nothing had happened. That was the night I knew I had to run. Please, I whispered, hating how my voice broke. Please just let me go. Something in my tone must have reached him because his grip loosened slightly. But he didn't release me. Give me your address. No. Elena? No. I wrenched my arm free, stumbling back a step. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk back into my life and demand things. I left for a reason. What reason? His voice rose, frustration finally cracking through his control. I gave you everything, everything you could have wanted, and you left without a word, without a trace, like I meant nothing. You meant too much. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. You meant too much, and your world was going to swallow me whole, and I couldn't. I stopped, pressing my hand to my mouth. I'd said too much, way too much. Dante went very still. In the distance, a siren wailed. One of his security guards murmured something into a radio, his eyes never leaving the alley entrance. Get in the car, Dante said quietly. I'll take you home. We'll talk there. Absolutely not. Then we talk here, in this alley, in the cold, for as long as it takes. He crossed his arms, and I knew that expression, immovable, implacable. A man who'd built an empire on never backing down. Your choice, Elena. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands and saw a text from the sitter. Sophia is running a fever. Nothing serious, but wanted you to know. My heart clenched. I typed back quickly. Coming home soon. Give her the infant Tylenol in the kitchen cabinet. When I looked up, Dante was staring at my phone screen, his expression unreadable, but something had changed in his eyes. Something sharp and knowing and absolutely terrifying. Sophia, he said softly. That's a beautiful name. I shoved my phone back in my pocket. I have to go. I'm taking you. No. Elena. He stepped closer again, and this time there was something different in his voice. Something almost gentle beneath the steel. Let me take you home. Please. Just let me see that you get there safely. The exhaustion crashed over me all at once. 3 years of running, of surviving, of holding everything together with dental floss and prayers. My feet hurt, my back hurt, my soul hurt. And standing here in this freezing alley, staring at the man I'd loved and left and mourned, I simply didn't have the energy to fight anymore. Fine, I said, but you drop me at the corner, not at my door, and then you leave. He nodded once. Sharp and definitive. Agreed. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I climbed into the Mercedes anyway, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dante slid in beside me, maintaining a careful distance, and the door closed with an expensive thunk that sealed us in together. The driver pulled out of the alley smoothly, and I gave him an address 3 blocks from my actual apartment. The interior of the car smelled like leather and Dante's cologne, and the heated seats were warm against my aching body. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city blur past, trying not to think about what I'd just agreed to, trying not to think about the fact that Dante Valenti now knew I had a child named Sophia, and wondering how long it would take before he figured out the rest. The silence in the car was suffocating. I kept my face turned toward the window, watching the city lights smear into watercolor streaks as we glided through Manhattan's late-night streets. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, pale, haunted, with eyes too large and a face that had lost the softness it once had. Behind that reflection, I could see Dante's profile, sharp and still as a statue, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite bring himself to speak. The driver navigated smoothly through traffic, and I noticed how the two security vehicles flanked us. One ahead, one behind. Even now, even for this, Dante traveled like a man at war, which I supposed he always was. "You look tired," he said finally, his voice cutting through the hum of the engine. I almost laughed. Tired. Such an inadequate word for the bone-deep exhaustion that had become my constant companion. I work 2 jobs. Tired comes with the territory. 2? Something dangerous flickered in his tone. Where else? A coffee shop in the mornings, 4 to 11. Then I go straight to Celestine. I didn't know why I was telling him this. Maybe because the dam had already cracked, and the truth was spilling out whether I wanted it to or not. His hand clenched into a fist on his thigh. "You work 19-hour days? Not every day. I get Sundays off from the coffee shop." I traced a pattern on the window with my finger. Anything to avoid looking at him directly. "It pays the bills. Mostly." "Jesus Christ, Elena. Don't." I turned to face him then, and the intensity in his dark eyes made my breath catch. "Don't you dare pity me. I made my choices. I'm living with them. Choices." He leaned forward slightly, and even that small movement felt predatory. "You call running away in the middle of the night a choice? Disappearing without a trace? Letting me think you were dead? I left a note." "A note?" His voice rose, controlled fury bleeding through. 3 sentences. "I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me, I'm sorry." That's what you call an explanation? The note had taken me 3 hours to write. I'd gone through dozens of drafts, each one longer, more honest, more revealing. But in the end, I'd settled for those 3 sentences because anything else would have made him come after me, and I'd needed him not to find me, for the baby's sake, for my own. "It was all I could give you," I said quietly. "It was nothing." He rubbed his hand over his face, and for the first time, I noticed the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago, the gray threading through his dark hair at the temples. "Do you know what I thought? When I came home and you were gone, when all your things were gone, and that fucking note was sitting on the counter?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. "I thought someone had taken you, thought it was a rival family, a message, a threat." His eyes locked onto mine. "I tore apart this city looking for you, called in every favor, threatened every contact. The Bratva, the Triads, the Italians upstate, everyone. I had men searching from Boston to Miami, and nothing. You'd vanished like you'd never existed." Guilt twisted in my stomach. "I'm sorry." "Sorry." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're sorry. Do you have any idea what the last 3 years have been like? Wondering every single day if you were suffering somewhere, if you needed help, if you were..." He stopped, his throat working. "If you were dead?" The car slowed, pulling up to a red light. The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, checking on his boss with the practiced concern of someone who'd served Dante for a long time. One of the security guards in the front passenger seat spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating with the vehicles around us. "I had to disappear," I said finally. "Your world, it's not a place to raise. I caught myself, but too late." Dante's eyes sharpened like a blade. "To raise what, Elena? Finish that sentence." "Nothing. I meant nothing." "You're lying again." He shifted closer, and suddenly the spacious back seat felt tiny. "And you're not very good at it. You never were. Your left eye twitches when you lie. Did you know that?" I touched my eye automatically, hating that he remembered such small details about me. Hating that his presence still made my heart race the way it had when we'd first met, when I'd been a hostess at a different restaurant, and he'd walked in like he owned the world because, In many ways, he did. The address you gave my driver, Dante continued, his voice dropping lower, is for a bodega that's been closed for 6 months. I know because I own the building. Ice flooded my veins. You don't... I own half the real estate in this borough, Elena. Did you really think you could hide from me in my own territory? He leaned back, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. But I won't push. Not tonight. I'll have Marco drop you wherever you want to go, and I'll wait. Because something tells me you're going to need help soon. And when you do, you'll call me. I won't. You will. He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his face in harsh blue light. Because whatever reason you had for leaving, whatever you're protecting, it's eating you alive. I can see it. You're drowning, and you're too stubborn to grab the life raft. The car turned onto a street I actually recognized, still 3 blocks from my apartment, but close enough that I could walk the rest. Here, I said quickly. Stop here. Marco, the driver, glanced at Dante in the rearview mirror, waiting for confirmation. Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded. The car pulled smoothly to the curb, and the security detail adjusted their positions accordingly. Thank you for the ride, I said, reaching for the door handle. Dante's hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not hard, not painful, but firm enough to stop me. Take this. He pressed something into my palm, a business card with a phone number embossed in black. This is my private line, not the office, not the business. Me. You call this number day or night, and I answer. I don't need... Take it anyway. His thumb brushed across my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. Please. The please broke something in me. Dante Valenti didn't say please. Not to enemies. Not to allies. Not to anyone. But he'd said it to me twice tonight, and both times it had felt like a crack in armor I hadn't realized he was wearing. I closed my fingers around the card. Goodbye, Dante. Not goodbye. His grip loosened but didn't release. Never goodbye. Not with you. I pulled my hand away and stumbled out of the car, my legs unsteady on the cracked sidewalk. The February wind cut through my thin jacket, and I hunched against it, wrapping my arms around myself. Behind me, I heard the car door close, but the Mercedes didn't pull away. I could feel Dante watching through the tinted windows as I walked, my shadow stretching long and thin under the streetlights. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I'd break. 3 blocks felt like 3 miles. My feet ached, my back throbbed, and every step was an exercise in not collapsing. But I made it to my building, a 5-story walk-up with peeling paint and a front door that didn't quite lock properly. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step an agony, and finally reached apartment 3C. The door opened before I could turn my key. Mrs. Chen stood there, all 4'11" of her, holding a sleeping Sophia in her arms. My daughter's dark curls were plastered to her forehead with sweat, her cheeks flushed with fever, and my heart clenched so hard it hurt. Fever broke about an hour ago, Mrs. Chen whispered in her heavy accent. She's sleeping good now. Lucas, too. He in the bedroom. Thank you so much. I took Sophia carefully, cradling her warm weight against my chest. She stirred slightly, making a small sound, and settled back into sleep. I'm so sorry I'm late. Let me get your money. Tomorrow is fine. Mrs. Chen patted my arm with wrinkled hands. You look dead on feet. Sleep first, pay tomorrow. Mrs. Chen, I can't keep asking you to wait. Shh. Tomorrow. She shuffled past me into the hallway, moving with the careful precision of her 78 years. Those babies need mother who sleeps, not mother who falls down. The door closed behind her, and I was alone with my daughter in the tiny apartment that smelled like the chicken nuggets I'd cooked for the twins' dinner, and the lavender spray I used to mask the lingering scent of mildew from the bathroom. I carried Sophia into the bedroom we all shared. Me in the double bed, the twins in their cribs that were really too small for them now, but were all I could afford. Lucas was sprawled on his back, arms flung wide, his chest rising and falling with the deep breathing of innocent sleep. He had a small Band-Aid on his knee from where he'd fallen at the park 2 days ago, and one of his toy trucks was clutched in his hand. They looked like their father, both of them. The same dark hair, the same olive skin, the same impossibly long lashes that I'd traced with my fingers when they were newborns, and I'd been terrified and alone and wondering how the hell I was going to survive. I laid Sophia in her crib, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin. She whimpered slightly, her forehead still warm, but not dangerously so, and I pressed a kiss to her temple. "Mama's home, baby," I whispered. "Mama's home." Then I sank onto my bed and let the tears come. They were silent tears, the kind that hurt your chest and made your throat burn. 3 years. 3 years of running, hiding, scraping by. 3 years of telling myself I'd made the right choice, that my children were safer away from Dante's world of blood and violence and men who solved problems with bullets. But God, I was so tired. I pulled out the business card he'd given me, studying it in the dim light from the street that filtered through our thin curtains. Just a phone number. No name, no logo, nothing to identify whose number it was. Completely untraceable to anyone who didn't already know. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made it home safe. Good. Sleep well, Elena." I stared at the message, my heart hammering. How did he? But of course he did. Dante Valenti didn't let anything go once he'd decided it was his. And despite 3 years of absence, despite my desperate attempts to erase myself from his life, he'd just proven that I'd never really escaped at all. I typed back, "Don't contact me again." The response came immediately. Can't promise that. Sweet dreams. I turned off my phone and shoved it under my pillow, as if that could somehow block him out. But I could still feel him out there. Somewhere in the city. Probably in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, surrounded by luxury and power, and the kind of security that came from being the most dangerous man in New York. Sleep came eventually, but it was fitful, filled with dreams of dark eyes and expensive cologne and the sound of gunshots echoing through marble hallways. I woke to Lucas screaming, not crying, screaming. The high-pitched, terrified sound of a child who'd woken from a nightmare and didn't understand where he was. I bolted upright, my heart in my throat, and found him standing in his crib with tears streaming down his face. "Mama! Mama!" "I'm here, baby. I'm here." I scooped him up, and he wrapped his arms and legs around me like a koala, his whole body shaking with sobs. "Shh, it's okay. Just a bad dream. Just a dream. Monster." He hiccuped against my neck. "Big monster. Teeth." "No monsters here, I promise. Mama won't let any monsters get you." I rocked him slowly, rubbing circles on his back the way I had since he was an infant. Sophia stirred in her crib but didn't wake, her fever clearly gone based on the normal temperature of her skin when I checked. The apartment was dark except for the streetlight glow, and when I checked my phone it read 6:47 a.m. I'd slept for maybe 5 hours, and my body felt like it had been hit by a truck. But Lucas was calming down, his sobs turning to hiccups, and I couldn't go back to sleep now anyway. "Hungry?" I asked him. He nodded against my shoulder, his dark hair tickling my chin. I carried him to our tiny kitchen, really just a galley with a 2-burner stove and a refrigerator that made concerning noises, and set him in his booster seat at our small table. The cabinet revealed the last of the Cheerios, enough for one small bowl. I'd have to buy more today, which meant dipping into the tip money I'd earmarked for the electric bill. The math was always impossible. Every dollar pulled in 3 directions, and somehow I was always coming up short. I poured the Cheerios and added milk that was dated 2 days ago, but smelled fine, then set it in front of Lucas. He dug in with his hands, shoveling cereal into his mouth with the messy enthusiasm of a 2-year-old, and despite everything, despite the exhaustion and the fear and the impossible situation I'd found myself in, I smiled. This was why I'd left. These moments of simple morning chaos, of Cheerio-covered faces and sticky fingers and laughter untainted by violence. This was what I was protecting. My phone buzzed on the counter, another text from the unknown number. "Good morning. Eat something. You looked too thin last night." I stared at the message. Anger and something else, something I didn't want to name, twisting in my chest. I typed back furiously, "Stop. Texting. Me. Can't. Thinking about you. Think about your girlfriend instead. She's not my girlfriend. Business arrangement. Her father needed a show of alliance. Anniversary dinner was for his benefit. I shouldn't engage. I knew I shouldn't. But my fingers moved anyway. None of my business. Everything about you is my business. Always was. Always will be. I turned off my phone and shoved it in a drawer, my hands shaking. Sophia started crying from the bedroom, her wake-up wail that meant she needed a diaper change and food, in that order. I left Lucas with his cereal and went to get her, going through the familiar morning routine on autopilot. Change diaper, wipe face, find clean clothes that weren't stained, make breakfast, clean up spills, referee tiny arguments, check temperatures, administer medicine, kiss boo-boos, sing songs, play trucks, build blocks, all while planning how to make $340 in tips stretched to cover rent, electricity, diapers, formula, groceries, the sitter, and the subway card that was almost empty. By 8:30 a.m., I had both twins fed, dressed, and ready for Mrs. Chen, who watched them while I worked my coffee shop shift. By 8:45, we were out the door, me carrying Sophia while Lucas held my hand, his little fingers sticky with syrup from the frozen waffles I'd made for breakfast. Mrs. Chen met us at her apartment on the second floor, her face lighting up when she saw the twins. They adored her, running to her with the kind of uncomplicated joy that children had for people who showed them consistent kindness. "You look terrible," Mrs. Chen said bluntly as I handed over Sophia. "Not sleeping?" "I'm fine." "Lying makes wrinkles worse." She bounced Sophia on her hip. "Go. Work. Make money. Come back tonight. We talk about payment plan, yes?" "Mrs. Chen. Go. Children are fine with Auntie Chen." I kissed both twins goodbye, breathing in their baby shampoo smell, trying to memorize every detail of their faces like I did every morning. Then I left, hurrying down the stairs and out into the February cold, heading for the subway that would take me to the coffee shop in Midtown, where I pulled espresso shots and smiled at customers who didn't tip and complained that their lattes were too hot, or too cold, or too foamy, or not foamy enough. The N train was packed with morning commuters, and I stood pressed between a man reading the Financial Times and a woman applying makeup with the precision of a surgeon. My feet already hurt from last night, and I closed my eyes, trying to center myself for the 7-hour shift ahead. The coffee shop was hell. The machine broke twice. There was a rush of tourists who didn't understand how to order, and my manager yelled at me for taking too long on my break when I'd been in the bathroom, trying not to vomit from exhaustion and stress. By the time my shift ended at 11, I had $23 in tips, and a headache that felt like someone was driving nails through my skull. I checked my phone as I left through the back door. 47 missed calls, all from the same unknown number. And one text. "Answer your goddamn phone, Elena." My hands went cold. Something was wrong. Dante didn't panic. Dante didn't make 47 calls unless... I called him back. He answered before the first ring finished. "Where the hell have you been?" "Working." "What's wrong?" "Get to the corner of 5th and 53rd. Now." "Why? What happened? Just do it." 5 minutes, Elena. Don't make me come find you." The line went dead. My heart hammered against my ribs as I ran toward the intersection, my worn sneakers slapping against the sidewalk. 5th and 53rd was 2 blocks away, and I covered it in record time, my breath coming in harsh gasps, my mind spinning through terrible possibilities. The twins. Something had happened to the twins. I rounded the corner and stopped dead. A black Mercedes SUV sat at the curb, the same one from last night. But this time, the back door was open, and Dante stood beside it, his expression carved from stone. He wasn't alone. 2 of his security guards flanked him, and between them stood a man I didn't recognize, young, maybe 25, with a split lip and a black eye forming, and terror written in every line of his body. "Dante, what? Do you know this man?" Dante's voice was flat, controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying. I stared at the stranger. "No. I've never seen him before." "Look again. Carefully." I stepped closer, studying the man's face. There was something vaguely familiar about him. Maybe from the coffee shop, maybe from the restaurant, maybe from... "He's been following you," Dante said. "For 3 days. I've had men watching you since last night, and they picked him up this morning. He's been taking pictures. Of you. Of your building. Of... He stopped, his jaw clenching. Of children. The world tilted. What? 2 children. A boy and a girl. Dark hair, approximately 2 years old. Dante's eyes locked onto mine, and in them I saw fury and knowledge and something that looked almost like betrayal. Want to tell me whose children he was photographing, Elena? Because I have a pretty good fucking guess. The street noise faded to a distant hum. Car horns, shouting vendors, the rhythmic thud of a jackhammer somewhere nearby. It all dissolved into white noise as I stared at the beaten man between Dante's guards. My vision tunneled, black spots dancing at the edges, and for a horrible moment I thought I might faint right there on Fifth Avenue. My voice came out strangled. Who hired him? Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not the answer he'd expected. We were just getting to that when I called you. But first, I need you to answer my question. He took a step toward me, and his security detail shifted with him, a synchronized movement that spoke of years of training. Are they mine? The words hung in the cold air between us. Around us, the city continued its relentless motion, pedestrians streaming past, taxis honking, the smell of hot dogs and exhaust, and someone's expensive perfume mixing into that distinctly New York scent. But in our small circle, time had stopped. Tell me, Dante said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper, but somehow more commanding than a shout. Are Lucas and Sophia mine? Hearing their names in his mouth felt like a violation, like he'd reached into my chest and pulled out my heart. How do you... I know everything about you, Elena. I knew by 6 this morning where you live, where you work, how much debt you're carrying, and the names of both children. He gestured to the man, who flinched. This piece of shit confirmed what I already suspected, so I'll ask you one more time. Are they mine? The truth sat on my tongue like poison. I could lie, should lie. But looking into Dante's eyes, seeing the dangerous edge of control he was hanging onto by a thread, I knew the lie would destroy whatever fragile détente we'd established. Yes, I whispered. The word landed like a bomb. Dante went absolutely still. Not the stillness of calm, but the stillness of a predator before it strikes. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and I watched his chest rise and fall with carefully controlled breaths. The 2 guards exchanged glances, their expressions neutral, but their body language suddenly more alert. Yes, Dante repeated, as if testing the word. Yes, 3 years. 3 fucking years, Elena. His voice cracked on my name. I have children, twins, and you kept them from me. I kept them safe, I shot back, anger finally cutting through the fear. Your world isn't safe. It's guns and blood and men who solve problems by making people disappear. I wasn't going to raise babies in that. So you raised them in poverty instead? His gesture encompassed everything. My worn clothes, my exhausted face, the desperation I couldn't quite hide. Working yourself to death, barely able to feed them, that's better. They're alive. They're healthy. They smile and play and don't hear gunshots when they're trying to sleep. My voice rose despite my best efforts. Yes, Dante. That's better. They're mine. The words came out raw, possessive, absolute. You had no right. I had every right. I was shaking now. 3 years of fear and exhaustion and desperate love pouring out in a flood. I saw you kill that man. Do you remember? In your office. He begged. He cried. He said he had children, and you put a bullet in his head like you were swatting a fly. Dante's expression darkened. He was stealing from me, stealing from the families who depend on me for protection. He knew the consequences. He had children. The words tore out of me. Children who went to bed that night without a father because you decided he'd broken your rules. And I was pregnant, Dante. Pregnant. And I looked at you with blood on your hands, and I thought, what if someday my children disappoint you? What if they break your rules? You think I would ever... He stopped, his jaw working. You think I would hurt my own children? I think your world would hurt them, even if you didn't. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the weak sunshine. I couldn't risk it. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 3 years of choices and consequences. The man who'd been following me whimpered slightly, and one of the guards jabbed him in the ribs to shut him up. "Who hired you?" Dante asked without taking his eyes off me. "I don't know, I swear. I just got a call. Anonymous, cash payment, liar." Dante's hand moved in a sharp gesture, and the guard on the left pulled out a gun, pressing it to the man's temple with casual efficiency. "Last chance. Who hired you to follow her, to photograph my children? My children." He'd said it so naturally, claimed them with 2 words like it was already fact. "Marco Tessio." The man's voice cracked, terror making him shake. "Marco Tessio hired me. Said he needed proof that you were distracted, that you'd gone soft. Something about a power play. I don't know the details, I swear I don't." Dante's expression went from cold to glacial. "Marco." The name came out like a curse, of course. "He's been pushing for months, questioning my decisions, rallying the younger soldiers." He looked at his head of security, a man I vaguely recognized from 3 years ago named Victor. "Find him, bring him to the warehouse, and spread the word. Meeting tonight, all captains, no exceptions. It's time to remind people why they don't cross me." Victor nodded and pulled out his phone, already making calls. The other guard kept his gun pressed to the photographer's head, waiting for instructions. "What are you going to do with him?" I asked, even though I already knew, already remembered. "What do you think?" Dante's eyes were chips of black ice. "He photographed my family. He gave intelligence to my enemy. There's only one consequence for that. Dante, no." He cut me off with a sharp gesture. "No, Elena. You don't get to run from my world for 3 years and then tell me how to handle threats to my children. This man," he pointed at the whimpering photographer, "put Lucas and Sophia in danger. Marco Tessio knows where you live now, knows they exist. Do you understand what that means?" I did. God help me, I did. In Dante's world, family was leverage. Family was weakness. Family was the button you press to make a man break. "You need to come with me," Dante continued. "Now. All 3 of you. I have a safe house in Westchester, fully staffed, complete security. You'll be protected there while I handle this. I can't just leave. I have work, bills, responsibilities. I'll handle it." He was already pulling out his phone. "Your shifts will be covered, your bills paid, your apartment maintained, whatever you need. But you and my children are not spending another night in that building with a broken lock and no security. You can't just take over my life. Watch me." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne mixing with the city air. "You made your choices, Elena. You chose to leave, to hide, to struggle alone. Fine. But the second Marco Tessio decided to use you and our children as weapons against me, you lost the luxury of independence. You're in my world now, whether you like it or not. They're not weapons. They're babies. Which is exactly why they need protection." His hand came up, almost touching my face before he seemed to catch himself. "Please, let me protect you. All of you. That's all I'm asking." It wasn't a request. Not really. But the fact that he'd phrased it as one, that he'd said please again, made something in my chest crack. "For how long?" I asked quietly. "Until Marco is handled and I've made it clear what happens to anyone who threatens my family." His eyes searched mine. "A few days, maybe a week. And then? Then we figure out the rest, together." He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "I'm sending a car to your building. Victor will escort you. Pack whatever you need for the twins. Clothes, toys, medicine. Don't worry about anything else. Mrs. Chen. I'll have someone explain to Mrs. Chen and pay her for her time, generously." He was already moving, his security detail falling into formation around him. "The car will be there in 20 minutes. Be ready." "Dante, wait." But he was already getting into the Mercedes, the photographer being shoved in after him, and I knew with absolute certainty that the man wouldn't be seen alive again. The door closed, and the vehicle pulled into traffic, flanked by its escorts, disappearing into the Manhattan chaos. I stood on the corner, shaking, my mind spinning. 20 minutes. I had 20 minutes to upend my life, pack up my children, and walk voluntarily into the world I'd spent 3 years running from. I pulled out my phone and called Mrs. Chen. Wei? Mrs. Chen, it's Elena. I need you to get the twins ready. Pack clothes for a few days. I'm coming now. What's wrong? You sound scared. Nothing's wrong. Just, please. I'll explain when I get there. I hung up and ran for the subway, my heart hammering, my mind racing through everything that had just happened. Dante knew. He knew about Lucas and Sophia. And more than that, he'd claimed them with a possessiveness that was both terrifying and, in some small, treacherous part of my heart, a relief. For 3 years, I'd carried everything alone. The fear, the exhaustion, the impossible weight of keeping 2 tiny humans alive and safe. And now, God help me, part of me wanted to let him shoulder some of that burden. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, his protection was worth the danger his world brought. The subway ride felt eternal. I burst into my building 12 minutes later, taking the stairs 2 at a time despite my screaming muscles, and nearly collided with Mrs. Chen in the 3rd-floor hallway. She had both twins dressed in their best clothes, hand-me-downs from a neighbor, but clean and mostly unstained, and a diaper bag packed to bursting. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Why you running?" "It's complicated. I'll pay you for this week and next, I promise. Forget money. Tell me truth. You in trouble?" I looked at her weathered face, saw the genuine concern there, and felt tears prick my eyes. Not trouble exactly, just their father found out about them. He wants us somewhere safe for a few days. Understanding dawned in her expression. The father. He rich? Powerful? Very. And dangerous? I hesitated, then nodded. Mrs. Chen surprised me by smiling. Good. Dangerous man can protect you. Rich man can feed babies. You need both, yes? She patted my cheek. Go. Be safe. Come back when ready. Mrs. Chen. Go. I gathered the twins, Sophia on my hip and Lucas's hand in mine, and headed back down to the street, just as a black SUV identical to Dante's pulled up to the curb. Victor stepped out, his expression professional but not unkind. "Ms. Elena, let me help you." He took the diaper bag and opened the back door, revealing 2 car seats already installed. Professional grade, expensive, adjusted to the perfect height. Of course they were. Dante didn't do anything halfway. "Mama, where we going?" Lucas asked, his dark eyes, so like his father's, wide with curiosity rather than fear. "An adventure," I managed, my voice only shaking slightly. "A fun adventure." Sophia babbled something incomprehensible and grabbed my hair, pulling hard enough to make my eyes water. Victor efficiently buckled both twins into their seats, then held the door for me. I slid in beside Sophia, my stomach churning with anxiety, and something I didn't want to examine too closely. The drive to Westchester took 45 minutes through midday traffic. The twins alternated between fascination with the fancy car and demands for snacks, which Victor somehow produced from a cooler in the front seat. Juice boxes, graham crackers, apple slices, all organic, all name brand, all things I could rarely afford. The safe house turned out to be a sprawling estate behind iron gates and stone walls, with security cameras visible every few feet, and guards stationed at the entrance. The SUV pulled up a long circular driveway to a house that looked like something from a magazine. White columns, manicured gardens, windows that sparkled in the weak February sunshine. "Holy shit," I breathed, then immediately covered my mouth. Wow. Victor's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Mr. Valenti wants you comfortable. There's a full staff. Cook, housekeeper, nanny if you need one. You have the entire 2nd floor. Anything you need, just ask." A woman appeared at the front door as we pulled up. Early 50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing slacks and a cardigan that screamed competent professionalism. She smiled warmly as Victor helped me with the twins. "Ms. Elena, I'm Margaret. I manage the household. Let me show you to your rooms." Her voice was kind, maternal even, and she crouched down to the twins' level. "And you must be Lucas and Sophia. I've prepared some toys in the playroom if you'd like to see them." Lucas's face lit up. "Toys?" So many toys. Come on, sweetheart. She led us inside, and I tried not to gape at the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The second floor was actually an entire wing, a master bedroom with an ensuite bathroom that had a tub the size of my kitchen, a nursery that had been fully stocked with everything from cribs to changing tables to more toys than any two children could play with, and a playroom with a reading nook and craft supplies, and a rocking horse that looked hand-carved. "This is too much," I said faintly. Mr. Valenti was very specific about his requirements. Margaret set the diaper bag down on a plush ottoman. "Dinner is at 6, but I can bring snacks anytime. The kitchen is fully stocked. You're not prisoners. You can go anywhere on the grounds, but please don't leave the property without security, for your safety." Right. Safety. That's what this was. Not a gilded cage, not Dante reasserting control. Just safety. The twins, oblivious to my internal crisis, immediately descended on the toys with shrieks of delight. Sophia found a stuffed elephant nearly as big as she was and hugged it fiercely. Lucas discovered a train set and started making choo-choo noises that echoed off the high ceilings. "I'll leave you to settle in," Margaret said gently. "Press the button by the door if you need anything." Then she was gone, and I was alone with my children in a mansion that belonged to their father, surrounded by luxury I'd never dreamed of, and security that meant we were as much prisoners as we were protected. I sank onto the floor next to Lucas, watching him play with the trains, and tried not to think about how easily Dante had upended my entire life in less than 24 hours. Tried not to think about how part of me was relieved, and tried very hard not to think about what would happen when he came home tonight and saw his children, our children, for the first time. The call came at 4:37 p.m. I was giving the twins a bath in the enormous tub, Sophia covered in bubbles and Lucas trying to make a beard out of soap, when my phone buzzed on the counter. Dante's private number flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello? Are you settled?" His voice was rough, strained in a way I'd never heard before. "Yes. The house it's incredible. Thank you." "Good. I'll be there by 7. Marco has been handled." Handled. Such a neutral word for what I knew it meant. "Dante, I need to see them, Elena." The strain intensified. "I need to see my children. Please don't fight me on this." The please again. It undid me every time. "They're here. They're safe. We'll be here when you arrive." A long exhale, like he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you. I'll see you soon." He hung up, and I stared at my phone, my hands shaking slightly. In 3 hours, Dante Valenti would meet his children, would see what we'd made together, what I'd been hiding for 3 years, would see how much they looked like him. I dressed the twins in the new clothes Margaret had somehow procured, soft cotton outfits that actually fit, unlike the hand-me-downs I usually wrestled them into. Combed their dark curls, still damp from the bath. Sophia kept trying to eat the brush, and Lucas insisted on wearing his favorite Trucks shirt under the new sweater, and the normalcy of these small battles helped steady my nerves. At 6 May, Margaret brought dinner to the playroom, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese for the twins, and a club sandwich for me that I couldn't even think about eating. My stomach was in knots, my mind spinning through 1,000 possible scenarios of how this evening could go wrong. At 6:47, I heard cars on the gravel driveway, multiple vehicles, the crunch of tires on stone. My heart kicked into overdrive. At 6:52, I heard voices in the foyer below. Dante's voice, low and commanding, giving instructions to someone. At 6:53, footsteps on the stairs. I stood up, smoothing my hands over my jeans, the same worn ones from last night, because I hadn't packed anything else. The twins were playing on the floor, Lucas building a tower with blocks while Sophia attempted to knock it down, their little faces scrunched in concentration. The door opened. Dante stood in the doorway, still wearing his suit from this morning, but with the tie loosened and the top button undone. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of stress and sleeplessness. But his gaze went straight to the twins and stayed there. I watched his face as he saw them for the first time, really saw them. His children, his blood, his legacy. Something broke in his expression, something fundamental and raw and utterly defenseless. He took a step into the room, then another, moving slowly like he was afraid they'd vanish if he moved too fast. "Lucas," he said softly. "Sophia." Lucas looked up at the sound of his name, and his eyes, Dante's eyes, widened. "Mama, who that?" I crouched beside him, my heart in my throat. That's your daddy, baby. He's been away for a while, but he's here now." "Daddy?" Lucas looked confused, then curious. "You have trucks?" And just like that, Dante Valenti, notorious crime boss, feared by half of New York's underworld, capable of ending lives with a word, laughed. It was a broken, incredulous sound, but it was genuine. "I can get trucks," he said, his voice rough. "All the trucks you want." He knelt on the floor, his expensive suit pants on the playroom carpet, not caring about wrinkles or dirt. And I watched my children meet their father for the first time. Watched Sophia toddle over to him with her stuffed elephant, offering it up like a gift. Watched Dante take it with hands that had pulled triggers and signed death warrants, but now trembled slightly as they accepted a toy from his daughter. "Thank you, sweetheart," he whispered. "It's beautiful." And I realized, watching him look at them with an expression of such profound wonder and love, that it hurt to witness, that everything had just changed. There was no going back from this moment. No more running, no more hiding. For better or worse, we were bound together now, me and Dante and the two small humans we'd created. And whatever came next, we'd have to face it as a family. Even if I had no idea what that family would look like, the next hour passed in a strange dreamlike quality that I couldn't quite process. Dante sat on the floor of the playroom, this man who commanded empires and ordered executions, pushing toy trucks with Lucas and making exaggerated engine noises that sent my son into fits of giggles. Sophia had claimed his lap as her throne, clutching her elephant, and occasionally patting his face with chubby hands, while babbling in her incomprehensible toddler language that Dante responded to as if he understood every word. I stood near the window, watching, my arms wrapped around myself like I could hold my breaking heart together through sheer force of will. Because this scene of domestic normalcy, of a father with his children, was everything I'd denied them, everything I'd told myself they were better off without. But watching Lucas's face light up when Dante helped him build a block tower, watching Sophia's delighted squeal when Dante tickled her stomach, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. They needed this. Needed him. And I'd kept it from them out of fear. "You're overthinking," Dante said without looking at me, his hands steady as he stacked another block on Lucas's tower. I can practically hear the guilt spiraling. "I'm not. You are." He glanced up, his dark eyes finding mine across the room. "And you're wondering if you made a mistake keeping them from me, if they would have been better off with a father, even one as fucked up as me." I flinched at the casual profanity, even though the twins were too absorbed in playing to notice. "Don't curse around them." "Noted." He turned back to the tower. "But I'm right, aren't I? You're drowning in guilt. Shouldn't I be?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I kept your children from you for 3 years. That's not exactly forgivable." "No," he agreed quietly. "It's not. But I understand why you did it." He helped Lucas place the final block, then sat back to admire their work. "Look at that, buddy. Tallest tower in the city." "Biggest," Lucas crowed, then immediately knocked it over with both hands, blocks scattering across the carpet. He dissolved into laughter, and Dante laughed with him, the sound rich and genuine, and so different from the cold, controlled man I'd seen kill someone in his office 3 years ago. Sophia started fussing, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists, and I recognized the signs immediately. She's tired. It's past their bedtime. Dante checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that probably cost 6 figures, and looked surprised. It's only 7:30. They're 2. 7:30 is late for them. I moved to scoop up Sophia, but Dante was faster, lifting her with a confidence that surprised me. She settled against his chest immediately, her head dropping to his shoulder, and something in my chest twisted painfully at the sight. "Show me their room," he said. "I'll help." "You don't have to." "I want to." His eyes met mine, and there was something fierce in them. 3 years, Elena. I've missed 3 years of bedtimes and first words and first steps. Let me have this one." I couldn't argue with that, couldn't argue with the raw need in his voice. So I gathered Lucas, who protested sleepily that he wasn't tired even as he yawned, and led Dante to the nursery Margaret had prepared. It was perfect, of course. 2 cribs with soft mattresses and clean sheets, a changing table stocked with diapers and wipes, a rocking chair by the window, and a nightlight that cast soft stars across the ceiling. The room smelled like baby powder and lavender. And suddenly I was exhausted, bone-deep exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "I've got her," Dante said softly, already moving to the changing table. "Walk me through it?" I stared at him. "You want to change her diaper? Is that so surprising?" He laid Sophia down gently, and she whimpered but didn't fully wake. "I'm their father. I should know how to do this." So I taught Dante Valenti, crime lord, killer, feared by men twice his size, how to change a diaper. Walked him through the wipes and the cream and the clean diaper, and tried not to laugh when he fumbled with the tabs and had to start over. He was patient with it, focused, and when Sophia was clean and comfortable in fresh pajamas that Margaret had somehow procured, he lifted her with a gentleness that made my throat tight. "Now what?" he asked. "Rock her, sing to her. She likes Twinkle Twinkle, but she'll fall asleep to anything if you're consistent." He settled into the rocking chair, cradling Sophia against his chest, and I got Lucas changed and into his crib. My son was already half asleep, his thumb in his mouth despite my attempts to break the habit, and he barely stirred when I kissed his forehead. Behind me, I heard Dante start to sing. His voice was low and rough, heavily accented on some of the English words, but he sang, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," like it was the most important performance of his life. Sophia's eyes drooped, her breathing evening out, and by the second verse she was asleep, her small hand curled against Dante's chest. I watched from beside Lucas's crib, my vision blurring with tears I couldn't quite stop. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to feel this ache in my chest, this longing for something I'd convinced myself we couldn't have, a family, a real family. Not just me struggling alone, but 3 of us, 4 of us, together. Dante finished the song and sat there for a long moment, just holding Sophia, his eyes closed and his expression unguarded in a way I'd never seen. When he finally stood to place her in her crib, his movements were careful, reverent, like he was handling the most precious thing in the world. Which, I supposed, he was. He stood over her crib for a long moment, just watching her sleep, then moved to Lucas's crib and did the same. His hand reached out, almost touching Lucas's dark curls, then pulled back like he was afraid he'd break something. "They're perfect," he whispered. "Jesus, Elena, they're perfect." "I know." My voice cracked. "They're everything." He turned to face me, and in the soft glow of the nightlight, I could see the sheen of moisture in his eyes. Dante Valenti didn't cry. I'd never seen him cry, not in the 2 years we'd been together before I left. But right now, looking at our children, he was close. "Thank you," he said roughly, "for keeping them safe, for taking care of them. I'm furious that you kept them from me. But I also know," he stopped, his jaw working. "I know you did what you thought was right. And they're healthy and happy and whole because of you. So thank you." I couldn't speak. Couldn't do anything but nod and try not to fall apart completely. "Come on," he said gently, gesturing to the door. "Let's let them sleep. We need to talk." That sounded ominous, but I followed him out of the nursery, pulling the door almost closed so we could hear if they woke, and down the hallway to the master bedroom. It was enormous. King-size bed with a canopy, fireplace, sitting area, and French doors that led to a balcony overlooking the gardens. Dante moved to the fireplace where a fire had already been lit and stared into the flames. I perched on the edge of an armchair, my hands twisted in my lap, waiting for the anger I knew was coming. The accusations, the demands. "Marco Tessio is dead," he said instead. "Him and the photographer. They won't be a threat anymore." I'd expected this, but hearing it confirmed still sent ice through my veins. How many others know? About Lucas and Sophia? My inner circle. The men I trust, absolutely. Victor, my captains, a few others. He turned to face me. They're sworn to secrecy on pain of death. And I made it very clear at tonight's meeting what happens to anyone who even looks at my family wrong. My family. He kept saying it so casually, claiming us with words like it was already settled. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now? He moved closer, and I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Now you and the twins stay here until I'm certain there are no other threats. A week, maybe 2, I'll have my people sweep your neighborhood, make sure no one else has been watching you. And then? Then we figure out a permanent arrangement. He sat on the ottoman across from me, close enough that our knees almost touched. I'm not asking you to come back to my penthouse, Elena. I'm not asking you to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. But I am telling you that my children will not grow up in a building with a broken lock and no security. They will not go to bed hungry or cold, or wondering if their mother can pay the electric bill. I've managed fine. You've been drowning. His voice was sharp. You work 19-hour days and can barely make rent. That's not managing. That's surviving by your fingernails. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I'm going to set you up in a secure apartment. Good neighborhood doorman, proper security. You'll have a monthly allowance, non-negotiable, for the twins' expenses and your own. And you'll quit both jobs. I can't just quit. You can and you will. You're going to collapse if you keep going like this. And then what happens to Lucas and Sophia? His eyes bored into mine. They need a mother who's healthy and present, not one who's working herself into an early grave. And what do you get out of this arrangement? I asked, my voice tight. Visitation rights? Weekly dinners where you play the doting father? I get to know my children. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I get to be part of their lives. I get to take them to the park and read them bedtime stories and teach them things. I get to be their father. Elena, that's what I get. In exchange for what? What do you want from me? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with 3 years of history and hurt. Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I want you to let me help, he said finally. I want you to stop running. Stop being so goddamn stubborn and proud that you'd rather suffer than accept anything from me. He reached out, his fingers brushing my knee, and even that small touch sent electricity racing through me. I want us to be civil, co-parents, maybe even friends eventually. Friends. The word tasted bitter. Is that what we are? I don't know what we are. His hand remained on my knee, warm and solid. I loved you. 3 years ago, I loved you more than I thought possible, and then you left. And I spent 3 years hating you for it. But now, he gestured vaguely toward the nursery. Now there are Lucas and Sophia, and everything's different. So, no, I don't know what we are, but I know what we need to be for them. He was right. God help me, he was right. Whatever residual feelings I had for Dante, and there were feelings, buried under layers of fear and self-preservation, but still there, had to take a back seat to what was best for our children. Okay, I said softly. Okay, we'll try. But I have conditions. Name them. No violence around them, ever. I don't care what business you have to handle, but Lucas and Sophia never see it, never hear about it. They grow up as normal as possible given the circumstances. Agreed. And I make the decisions about their daily lives. School, doctors, food, activities. You can have input, but I'm their primary caregiver. I know what's best for them. Agreed. With one caveat. I want to be informed. Not consulted necessarily, but informed. I don't want to miss anything else. Fair enough. Fine. And one more thing. I took a breath, steadying myself. You can't just decide things for me. The apartment, the money, it's generous and I appreciate it. But you can't control my life. If I want to work, I work. If I want to date, I stopped, seeing his expression darken. If I want to do anything, you don't get to forbid it. Date. He said the word like it was poison. You want to date? I didn't say I wanted to. I said if I wanted to, you don't get to stop me. His hand tightened on my knee, his jaw clenching. No. Excuse me? No. He stood abruptly, pacing to the fireplace and back. You can work if you want, go where you want, do what you want. But dating? Bringing men around my children? Absolutely not. That's incredibly hypocritical, considering you had a date last night. That wasn't a date. That was business. Isabel's father controls the shipping unions, and I needed his cooperation. He stopped in front of me, his eyes blazing. There's no one, Elena. There hasn't been anyone since you left. Do you understand? 3 years, and I couldn't even look at another woman because all I saw was you. The confession hit me like a physical blow. Dante? So no. You don't get to date. You don't get to bring strange men into my children's lives. You want a relationship? You have one. With me. We're not together, I said. But my voice came out weak, unconvincing. Aren't we? He crouched in front of me, his hands on the armrests of my chair, caging me in. We have children together. We're bound together for life, and you're trying to tell me you feel nothing? That you don't remember what we had? What we had ended when I saw you kill someone? What we had ended when you ran without giving me a chance to explain? His face was inches from mine now, and I could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. That man, the one I killed, he wasn't just stealing money, Elena. He was trafficking girls, teenagers. He was using my shipping routes to move them. And when I found out, when I confronted him, he laughed. Told me I was a hypocrite for having a problem with it when I'd killed plenty of men myself. I stared at him, my mind reeling. You never told me. You didn't give me a chance to tell you. You saw blood and made your decision. His voice dropped lower, more intense. I'm not a good man, Elena. I won't pretend to be. But I have lines, rules, and hurting kids crosses every single one of them. So yes, I killed him. I'd do it again. But I'm not the monster you've painted me as in your head. Then what are you? I whispered. I'm a man who loves his children, who loved their mother, who's trying very hard not to fuck this up. His hand came up, cupping my face, and I should have pulled away, but I couldn't. Give me a chance. A real chance. Not for us, but for them. Let me prove I can be what they need. And what about what I need? What do you need, Elena? His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. Because if it's safety, I can give you that. If it's security, stability, a life where you're not working yourself to death, I can give you all of that. Just tell me what you need. What did I need? I needed sleep. Needed to not worry about money every second of every day. Needed to watch my children grow up without the constant fear that I couldn't provide for them. But more than that, and this was the terrifying part, I needed to stop feeling so goddamn alone. I need time, I said finally. Time to process this, to figure out what's best for Lucas and Sophia, I stopped, swallowing hard, to figure out if I can trust you again. Something flickered in his expression, hurt, maybe, or resignation. But he nodded and pulled back, giving me space. Time. Okay. You can have time. But you're staying here until I know it's safe, and the apartment and allowance are non-negotiable. Those are for the twins, not you. Dante. Non-negotiable, Elena. His voice hardened, taking on that edge of command that had probably terrified countless men. I've lost 3 years with my children. I'm not losing anything else. You want time? Fine, but you're taking the help. End of discussion. I wanted to argue, wanted to fight him on principle alone. But the exhaustion was back, crashing over me in waves, and I simply didn't have the energy. Fine, but I'm serious about the conditions. No violence around them. No bringing your work home. Agreed. You have my word. His word. 3 years ago, that would have meant everything. Now, I wasn't sure what it meant at all. A soft cry came from the nursery. Sophia, probably having a nightmare or needing her pacifier. I started to stand, but Dante was already moving. I'll get her, he said. You should rest. You look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't. Then sleep. I'll handle tonight. You don't know their routines, so I'll learn. He paused at the door. Go to bed, Elena. I've got this. And then he was gone. leaving me alone in the enormous bedroom with a fire crackling and a bed calling my name. I heard him in the nursery, his voice soft as he soothed Sophia back to sleep, and something in my chest loosened just slightly. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Maybe we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. Not a romance, not the passionate, dangerous love affair we'd had before, but something stable, something safe for Lucas and Sophia. I pulled off my jeans and climbed into the bed in just my underwear and shirt, too tired to care about finding pajamas. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, impossibly soft, and the mattress felt like sleeping on a cloud. I was asleep within minutes, the sound of Dante's voice singing Twinkle, Twinkle, drifting through the darkness like a lullaby meant for me too. I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the smell of coffee. For a moment, I was disoriented. The bed was too soft, the room too large, the silence too complete. Then memory crashed back. Westchester. The safe house. Dante. I sat up, my heart racing, and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 8:47 a.m. I'd slept for over 12 hours. The twins would be awake, probably starving, definitely needing changes, and I scrambled out of bed and ran to the nursery, but both cribs were empty. Panic flooded through me until I heard laughter from downstairs, children's laughter, and a deeper voice responding in Italian. I threw on my jeans and made my way downstairs, following the sound to a bright, airy kitchen that looked like something from a cooking show. And there, at a large wooden table, sat Dante with Lucas on one side, and Sophia in a high chair on the other. They were eating pancakes shaped like animals, elephants and giraffes, and what might have been a very abstract lion, and Lucas was covered head to toe in syrup. Dante looked up when I entered, and something soft crossed his face. "Good morning. I was about to wake you, but you needed the sleep. You let me sleep for 12 hours while you—" I gestured helplessly at the domestic scene before me. "While I fed my children breakfast? Yes. Shocking." He stood, pouring coffee from a French press into a mug and handing it to me. "Margaret showed me where everything was. Lucas likes his pancakes cut into pieces, and Sophia prefers her fruit mashed. They both hate orange juice but love apple juice, and they need their vitamins with breakfast." I stared at him. "How do you—" I asked, and paid attention. He moved back to the table, wiping syrup off Lucas's chin with practiced ease that seemed impossible for someone who'd met his children less than 24 hours ago. They're not that different from running a complex organization. You identify needs, establish routines, and adjust when necessary. You did not just compare parenting to running the Mafia. Why not? Both require patience, strategy, and the ability to negotiate with tiny terrorists. He grinned. Actually grinned. And my heart did something complicated in my chest. This was dangerous. This easy domestic scene, this version of Dante who sang lullabies and made animal pancakes and looked at our children like they'd hung the moon. This was the man I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, the one I'd seen glimpses of between the violence and the danger. And I couldn't let myself forget that the violence was still there, lurking beneath the surface, no matter how charming he appeared in this moment. But watching him help Sophia drink from her sippy cup, his large hands gentle and sure, I couldn't quite remember why I'd been so certain that keeping them apart was the right choice. Maybe love wasn't simple. Maybe it was messy and complicated and filled with contradictions. Dangerous and safe. Wrong and right all at once. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to make it work anyway. The days that followed fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected, domestic and surprisingly normal, despite the armed guards patrolling the perimeter and the bulletproof glass in every window. Dante came every morning before the twins woke, often bringing breakfast from whatever bakery had caught his attention, and stayed until they went down for their afternoon nap. Then he'd disappear to handle whatever dark business required his attention, returning in the evening for dinner and bedtime routines. He never talked about the work, never brought it into the house, and true to his word, there was no violence, no blood, no reminders of the world that existed beyond these gates. It was almost easy to pretend we were normal. By the 5th day, I'd stopped flinching when he walked into a room. By the 7th, I'd stopped monitoring his every interaction with the twins, trusting that he wouldn't hurt them, intentionally or otherwise. And by the 10th day, I'd stopped lying to myself about the ache in my chest every time he smiled at Lucas, or made Sophia giggle. I was falling for him again, or maybe I'd never stopped. It was late afternoon on day 12 when everything shifted. The twins were napping, and I was curled up in the library, an actual library with floor-to-ceiling books and a rolling ladder, reading something mindless and trying not to think too hard about my situation. The apartment Dante had secured was ready. He'd shown me pictures. A brownstone in Park Slope with a yard, 3 bedrooms, security system, and a doorman who was definitely more than just a doorman. It was beautiful. Safe. Everything I'd dreamed of providing for my children. And I was terrified of moving into it because it felt like accepting that this was real, that we were doing this, that Dante Valenti was permanently in our lives. You're thinking too loud again. I looked up to find him standing in the doorway, jacket discarded somewhere, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that I definitely shouldn't be noticing. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there was tension around his eyes that hadn't been there this morning. Bad day? I asked. Complicated day. He moved into the room, pouring himself whiskey from the decanter on the side table before settling into the chair across from me. One of my captains is questioning some recent decisions. Nothing I can't handle, but it's tedious. Decisions about us. His eyes met mine. About the resources I'm allocating to protecting you. About why the boss is suddenly playing house in Westchester instead of being visible in the city. He took a drink, the amber liquid catching the light. About whether having a family makes me weak. Fear spiked through me. Are we putting you in danger? No. His voice was absolute. Anyone stupid enough to think my family makes me weak will learn very quickly how wrong they are. But it is an adjustment for everyone. We can leave. Go somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't complicate your business. Elena. He set down his glass and leaned forward. You're not going anywhere except to that apartment in Park Slope. With security. With everything you and the twins need. This isn't up for debate. Everything is always up for debate. You don't get to just decide. Watch me. He stood, moving toward me with that predatory grace that still made my pulse spike. I've spent 12 days watching you be an incredible mother, watching you love our children with everything you have, watching you struggle to accept help because you're so used to doing everything alone. He stopped in front of my chair, looking down at me with an intensity that stole my breath. But I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. So you can fight me on the apartment, the money, the security, or you can accept that this is how things are now and stop making everything harder than it needs to be. You're being a controlling asshole. Yes. He didn't even deny it. But I'm a controlling asshole who loves his children and refuses to let them grow up in poverty when I have the means to prevent it. So call me whatever names you want, Elena. But you're moving into that apartment at the end of the week. I glared at him, hating that he was right, hating that I wanted what he was offering, hating that some traitorous part of me thrilled at his protectiveness, even as it chafed against my hard-won independence. I hate you sometimes, I said, but there was no heat in it. I know. He reached down, his fingers brushing my cheek. But you don't hate me right now, don't I? No. His thumb traced my bottom lip, and suddenly the air between us was charged with something dangerous. Right now, you're remembering what it was like between us, how good it was before everything went to shit. Dante, tell me you don't feel it. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Tell me you don't think about it late at night when you're alone in that big bed. Tell me you haven't noticed the way I look at you when you're playing with the twins, like you're everything I've ever wanted, and everything I lost, and everything I'm terrified of losing again. This is a bad idea, but I didn't pull away from his touch. Probably the worst. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, see the golden flecks in his dark eyes. But I've spent 3 years living with bad ideas. What's one more? He kissed me. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative or testing. It was desperate and claiming and filled with 3 years of grief and anger and need. His hands framed my face, tilting my head back as he deepened the kiss, and I made a sound I didn't recognize, something between a moan and a sob, as my hands fisted in his shirt. I'd forgotten. Somehow, impossibly, I'd forgotten how he tasted, how he felt, how kissing Dante was like standing in the middle of a wildfire and welcoming the burn. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me up from the chair and against him. And I could feel the hard planes of his body, the way his heart was racing as fast as mine. 3 years. 3 years without this, without him. And my body remembered everything. Every touch, every kiss, every moment of pleasure and pain and perfect rightness. Dante, I gasped when he pulled back, his forehead resting against mine, both of us breathing hard. I know we shouldn't. His hands tightened on my waist. But Christo, Elena, I've missed you. Missed this. Missed us. There is no us. Not like that. We're co-parents, we agreed. Fuck what we agreed. He kissed me again. Shorter this time, but no less intense. I want you back. Not just as the mother of my children. Not just as someone I'm civil with. I want you, Elena. All of you. The way it was before. It can't be like before. Too much has happened. Then we'll make it better. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. We'll build something new. Something stronger. Something that can survive the truth about who I am and what I do. Your world almost destroyed me. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure it doesn't happen again. His voice was fierce, absolute. But I won't, pretend I don't love you. That I haven't loved you every single day for the last 3 years. That watching you with our children doesn't make me want things I have no right to want. Tears pricked my eyes. What things? More mornings like this. More bedtimes and family dinners and moments where we're just us. A family. Not broken or complicated or held together by obligation, but real. Together. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. I want to wake up next to you, want to come home to you, want to build a life that's ours, not just an arrangement for the twins' sake. I'm scared. The admission came out as a whisper. I'm so scared, Dante, of your world, of what it could do to them, to me, of losing myself again. Then don't lose yourself. Keep your strength, your independence, your fire. I don't want you docile and obedient. I never did. I want you exactly as you are. He kissed my forehead, gentle this time. And I swear to you, on everything I am, I will protect you. Nothing and no one will ever hurt my family, not while I'm breathing. I wanted to believe him, God. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but I'd seen too much, knew too much about the kind of danger that came with loving someone like Dante Valenti. I need time, I said again. Real time. To think about this without you kissing me and making me forget all the reasons we can't work. He smiled. That dangerous, devastating smile that had first made me fall for him. I can give you time, but I'm not giving you distance. I'm not going anywhere, Elena, and eventually, you're going to stop fighting this and admit what we both know. We belong together. You're awfully confident. I'm patient. He stepped back, putting space between us, and I immediately missed his warmth. I waited 3 years to find you. I can wait a little longer for you to come back to me. A cry came from upstairs, Lucas, waking from his nap with his usual burst of energy. Dante's expression softened immediately, and he headed for the stairs. I'll get him. You finish your book. Dante? He paused at the door. Yeah? Thank you. For all of this. The house, the security, the help. Even if I'm terrible at accepting it, I do. I appreciate it. You don't have to thank me for taking care of my family. His eyes met mine, intense and full of promises I wasn't sure he could keep. It's what I do. It's who I am. And it's who I'll always be. For you and for them. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing on the stairs. And I sank back into my chair, my fingers touching lips that still tingled from his kiss, my heart racing with fear and hope, and something that felt dangerously like love. 3 days later, we moved into the Park Slope apartment. It was everything Dante had promised and more. Hardwood floors that gleamed, large windows that let in natural light, a kitchen with actual counter space, and a backyard where the twins could play without me worrying about broken glass or suspicious characters. The security was discreet but present, the doorman cheerful but clearly ex-military. and the building itself was beautiful in that old New York way that spoke of history and permanence. Dante had furniture delivered, kid-friendly but stylish, comfortable but durable. He'd stocked the kitchen with food, the bathroom with supplies, and the nursery with more toys than 2 children could play with in a year. He'd thought of everything, down to the coffee maker that was the exact brand I preferred, and the lavender pillow spray I used to help me sleep. It was perfect. It was terrifying. Because accepting this, accepting the apartment and the security and the life he was building for us, felt like accepting him back into my heart. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. But watching Lucas run through the backyard, squealing with delight at having space to play, watching Sophia explore her new room with wide-eyed wonder, I couldn't regret it. Whatever complicated feelings I had about Dante, I couldn't regret giving my children this. He showed up for dinner that first night, bringing Italian takeout from a restaurant in Little Italy that I'd once told him was my favorite. We ate at the new dining table while the twins made a glorious mess with spaghetti, and it felt so normal, so domestic, that my chest ached with the possibility of it. After dinner, after baths and bedtime stories and finally getting both twins to sleep, we stood in the kitchen drinking wine and pretending we weren't hyper-aware of each other's proximity. "They seem happy here," Dante said, swirling the red wine in his glass. "They are. I gestured helplessly. "It's more than I ever dreamed of giving them." "Thank you. Stop thanking me." He set down his glass and moved closer. "They're my children. This is the bare minimum of what they deserve. Still, I appreciate it." We stood in silence for a moment, the air heavy with unspoken words. Outside, the city hummed its endless symphony of sirens and traffic and life. Inside, there was just us, and the quiet sound of the refrigerator, and everything we weren't saying. "I should go," Dante said finally. "Let you settle in." "Okay." But neither of us moved. We stood there in the kitchen, the space between us charged with possibility and fear, and 3 years of history that wouldn't simply disappear because we wanted it to. "Elena, stay." The word came out before I could stop it. "Tonight, just stay. Not like that. But the twins will wake up tomorrow morning, and it would be nice if you were here. If we could have breakfast together, as a family." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm asking anyway." He smiled, slow and devastating. "Then I'll stay." He took the guest room. We were careful not to cross that line, not to push too fast too soon. But knowing he was in the apartment just down the hall made something in me settle, made the night feel less lonely, the darkness less absolute. And when I woke the next morning to the sound of him making coffee and the twins' laughter echoing from the kitchen, something in my heart clicked into place. This was real. This could work. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something lasting from the broken pieces of what we'd lost. The weeks that followed established a new normal. Dante came every morning, often staying late into the evening. He taught Lucas to count in Italian. He rocked Sophia through her nightmares. He fixed the wobbly table leg and assembled the bookshelf I'd been putting off, and integrated himself into our lives so seamlessly that it became harder to remember what it had been like without him. We didn't talk about labels, didn't define what we were to each other beyond co-parents, but the touches lingered longer, the glances grew heated, and more nights than not, he stayed in the guest room until it stopped feeling like a guest room and started feeling like his room. 2 months after we'd moved in, Lucas took his first tumble down the stairs. It wasn't serious, just 3 steps, and Dante had been right there to catch him before real damage was done, but Lucas had been terrified, screaming and crying inconsolably. I'd scooped him up, checking for injuries, while Dante hovered with barely controlled panic. "Is he okay? Should we call a doctor? Cristo, I should have been watching more carefully." "He's fine, just scared." I bounced Lucas gently, rubbing circles on his back. "You're okay, baby. Just a little tumble." "You're so brave." Lucas's sobs gradually subsided to hiccups, and he lifted his head from my shoulder to look at Dante. "Daddy, catch me." "I did, buddy. I'll always catch you." Dante's voice was rough, emotional. "Always. Promise?" "I promise." Lucas held out his arms, and after a moment's hesitation, transferred from me to Dante, wrapping his small arms around his father's neck. Dante held him like he was made of glass, his eyes closing, and I watched something break and remake itself in his expression. Ti amo, Lucas, he whispered against our son's hair. Ti amo così tanto. I love you. I love you so much. My vision blurred with tears. And when Dante looked up and saw my expression, he held out his other arm. I stepped into his embrace, the three of us holding each other in the hallway. And Sophia must have sensed something, because she toddled over from where she'd been playing and wrapped her arms around our legs, adding herself to the family pile. We're okay, I whispered. We're all okay. Yeah. Dante's voice was thick. We are. That night, after the twins were asleep, I found him on the balcony, staring out at the Brooklyn skyline. The spring air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from the garden below, and the city lights painted everything in shades of gold and shadow. Hey, I said softly, joining him at the railing. Hey. He didn't look at me, his jaw tight. I could have lost him today, if I'd been a second slower, but you weren't. You caught him. You kept him safe. I touched his arm. That's what matters. I've spent my entire adult life being in control, knowing the angles, planning for contingencies, ensuring nothing catches me off guard. He finally turned to face me, but with them, with you, I'm constantly terrified because I can't control everything, can't prevent every danger, and the thought of something happening to any of you. He stopped, his throat working. That's what love is, I said quietly. Terror and joy in equal measure. The constant fear that something could go wrong mixed with the absolute certainty that it's worth the risk. Is it? Worth the risk? I thought about the last 2 months. The morning chaos and bedtime routines. The laughter and the tantrums and the small, perfect moments that made up a life. Thought about watching Dante become a father, seeing the ruthless crime lord transform into a man who sang off-key lullabies and made silly faces to earn giggles. Thought about how my heart felt when he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 3 years. Yes, I said, it's worth it. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. I love you, Elena. Never stopped. Never will. And I know you're scared. I know I fucked up before, but I swear to you, I will spend every day proving that we can make this work, that my world doesn't have to destroy us, that we can build something strong enough to survive anything. I love you too. The words tumbled out. 3 years overdue. God help me. I love you too. Even when I was running, even when I was terrified, I never stopped loving you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promises we were both committing to keep. And when we finally pulled apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. Marry me. I blinked. What? Marry me? Not someday. Not eventually. Let me make this official. Let me give you my name. Give the twins legitimacy in my world. Give us the protection that comes with being family in every sense of the word. Dante, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. But know that I'm serious. I want everything, Elena. The ring, the vows, the life together. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want more mornings like the ones we've had and more children if you want them and a lifetime of building something beautiful from this mess we've made. My heart hammered against my ribs. 3 months ago, I'd been serving tables and barely surviving. Now I was standing on a balcony in Brooklyn, with the father of my children asking me to marry him. And the terrifying thing was, I wanted to say yes. Ask me again, I whispered. In 6 months, after we've had time to really build this, to make sure it's not just the novelty or the children bringing us together. Ask me when you're sure, and when I'm sure, and when we both know this is forever. He smiled, that dangerous, devastating smile. I'll ask you every day for 6 months if that's what it takes, and in 6 months, when you say yes, I'm going to marry you so fast you won't have time to change your mind. Pretty confident. Always. He kissed me again, softer this time. I've waited 3 years to get you back. 6 more months is nothing. He kept his promise. Every single day for 6 months, Dante Valenti asked me to marry him. Over morning coffee, during bedtime stories, in the middle of grocery shopping while Lucas demanded cookies and Sofia tried to climb out of the cart. He asked in Italian and English, seriously and playfully, with grand gestures and quiet moments, and every day, I fell more in love with him. We built a life. Not the one we'd had before, but something better. Something forged from honesty and trust, and the shared determination to protect what we'd created. He kept his promise about the violence, handling business away from home and never bringing darkness into our sanctuary. I kept my promise about letting him be involved, sharing every decision and milestone and mundane moment of raising our children. We fought sometimes, argued about boundaries and control and the impossible balance between his world and the normal life I wanted for our family, but we always talked it through, always found compromise, always remembered that we were on the same side. And 6 months to the day after he'd first proposed, Dante asked me again. We were in the backyard, watching Lucas and Sofia play in their inflatable pool, the summer sun warm on our faces. He turned to me, taking my hand, his expression serious. "Elena Russo, will you marry me?" I looked at our children, splashing and laughing without a care in the world, looked at the man beside me who'd fought for us, protected us, loved us, with a fierceness that still took my breath away. Thought about the life we'd built and the future stretching before us. "Yes," I said, "yes, I'll marry you." The smile that broke across his face was worth every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every tear I'd cried over the last 3 years. He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple diamond on a platinum band, elegant and perfect, and slid it onto my finger while our children cheered because they'd been coached for this moment. The little conspirators. We married a month later in the garden of the Westchester house where we'd first become a family. Small ceremony, just close friends, and Dante's most trusted people. Lucas and Sofia were ring bearer and flower girl, making an adorable mess of their duties. And when Dante kissed me as his wife, with our children laughing and the summer sun shining and the future bright before us, I knew we'd finally made it. We'd survived the darkness, survived the fear and the running, and the 3 years apart. And we'd come out the other side stronger, better, ready to build something that would last forever. That night, after the reception, after the twins were finally asleep in their room and we were alone in ours, Dante pulled me close. "Thank you," he whispered against my hair, "for giving me another chance, for letting me prove I could be the man you deserved. Thank you for never giving up." I kissed him softly. "For finding us, for loving us enough to fight for this. Always." His hands tightened on my waist. "For the rest of my life, Elena Valenti. You and our children. You're everything. My empire, my legacy, my reason for breathing. And I will protect that with everything I am. I know." And I did. Finally, completely, I trusted it. "I love you. Ti amo, mia moglie, per sempre." I love you, my wife. Forever. And as he kissed me, as we fell into bed together as husband and wife, as the city hummed beyond our windows and our children slept peacefully down the hall, I knew that forever was exactly what we'd have. We'd taken the broken pieces of our past and built something beautiful, something lasting, something worth every risk, every fear, every moment of pain. We'd built a family. And nothing. Not his world, not danger, not the darkness that would always lurk at the edges, would ever tear that apart again.